So today I wanted to give you the background and the story of New York's Irish Navy and how that song came about. In so many cases, I kind of stumbled across this story and I thought it was really interesting because the story is that in New York, there's like 2 or 3 big tugboat companies, at least they were sort of, turn of the century. And I thought it was a really interesting story because there was so many, there was like 2 companies specifically started by Irish people. The story was there was so many tugboat operators and Irish people working on those tugboats that it was New York's Irish Navy. And I thought that was a really, really interesting story. So I kind of dug into it and I came up with the names of the companies. And because I was so interested in the story, I actually got in touch with one of the companies. Sheer act of madness, probably not really necessary, but I was kind of looking for some, I was also looking for some video and photo material if they had anything, which is really good. Yeah, so they were lovely and we had a chat and it was interesting to sort of, hear firsthand. And one of the seniors had just recently passed and I was talking to one of the sons and he said, it's a pity that you didn't get in touch earlier because my dad would have got a real kick out of this. So that was a really good start to the story. And the song itself, there's these stories of artists struggling to get the song on the road. And this is actually one of those cases because it went through sort of different cycles and went through different lives, this song. It started off as something completely different. And then I scrapped that and I started again. And I scrapped that and I started again. But I still had this line. I still had this this thing which I thought was a good hook. And the devil dragged me across the sea to join New York's Irish Navy. New York's Irish Navy. That's great. It is great, I had all of this stuff sort of built around the song. I had all this story, but I didn't have the bloody song to start off with. I had sort of bits and bobs of a song. And as it is in so many cases, you struggle with this damn song and then suddenly it comes together. And then you can't really sort of connect the dots. How did it actually come about? Because you remember sort of, being in the studio and struggling and sort of saying, nah, this isn't it. So, let me just refine this and come back again. But then when it actually does happen, you're not quite sure how it did happen. And that's very, very true in this case. I'm not exactly sure how it came together, but I think it was kind of incremental. The more I sort of was able to finesse the lyrics, the more the music sort of worked its way around the lyrics, which I guess in the way I write is very often the case because I typically start with a lyric and I don't start with a song. I don't start with sort of, musicality. I start with lyrics. And so then the next thing, of course, was to have the melody, the tune and that kind of stuff. And then again, that kind of sort of came together very well. The only thing that if I were to sort of go back and change something, I think it would need a better middle 8. Well, this is kind of always the problem with me and my middle 8s. Sometimes I don't like my middle 8s a lot. And this is maybe one of those cases where I think, it could have been stronger. Whereas it's perfectly passable and it's perfectly good. And it also highlights the instruments very, very well. So there is a logic and there is a lot of good to it. So in short, it was a bit of a struggle. It was a bit of it was a bit tricky to get it together, but then it did actually come together very well. And I think it did highlight the musicality of the band. I think it did have extraordinarily good lyrics, if I say so myself. And it had pretty good music. And that, for me, makes it a very, very good song, which I think hasn't, as yet, got the recognition it has deserved. So if you can spare a moment, maybe you can go back and listen to that song, because it is actually fabulous, if I do say so myself.